Hello, welcome to Walking the Earth podcast, the podcast about the travel lifestyle. I'm Justin Castro calling in from New York City, New York. Previously on Walking the Earth podcast, you heard part one of Mike's conversation with Pete Hillman, who is a digital nomad and has been traveling the world for over 30 years. In part one, they talk about changes in travel, and Pete shares a few stories from the road that he's seen over the past 30 years. And part two, which you're about to listen to, is where the conversation takes a very interesting turn. And they touch on a lot of different topics. Just to name a few, the perception that different countries have of the Western world. They talk about Vipassana and mindfulness. They talk about different consumer-led societies, gross national happiness versus GDP. And a very interesting one that Pete touches on is cultural erosion. So get cozy, because here is Pete Hillman, part two. Enjoy.
Chiang Mai and Thailand sold as this startup digital nomad thing. I've never liked the title digital nomad, but it defines what they are very well, and I suppose you could say I'm one of them. But there's much more to it. You can't just breeze over and expect a 4-hour work week. And things like that, and that's being sold, and it's not true. You have to do some thinking, but then when you do come here and you have a go, that's an English saying, have a go, and be open, you can live a very high quality of life for very little money.
That's just true, very, very true. It's interesting because it's kind of making me think about some things we talked about earlier with so we were saying that, there's more Americans traveling, and it ties in a few things in that, you were saying the gap year is more common for people from the UK and Australia and all these places. So backpacking, I think, is there's more backpackers from these countries. And when I was saying earlier, I'm seeing more Americans. You know what it is I'm seeing what Americans are going for travel. It's to do the digital, so it's a different mentality. It's not, totally different. Not so much going to to travel and see a place. It's like a lot of Americans are traveling to keep working, which is okay. Also, it's
a different angle.
It's just a different. It's a different type of travel that you're seeing, and both are good.
I've
been on all
sides
ways,
of it. Your experience will be totally different. We used to save up in England and work doing odd jobs, or selling stuff or whatever, and then we'd get enough money to go away in 6 months. Then you go back for another 3 or 6 months and go away for the winters. The winters are lousy in England. So that's what we would do, and then it became tenable to work online and that. But that's totally different. When you have 6 months of money in the bank and you're not worried about it, your whole attitude of observation and travel is different to, I've got to get online and put this press release out, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. It is different, but it's still good. But there are people here, particularly the digital nomads, are not travelers in the old sense that we used to be, hitching around America or getting on a 72-hour train in India, and you don't care if you've got. And in fact, I think in many ways you benefit from being offline for that amount of time.
I think a little bit of disconnection is always good.
Well, for me, a lot. People say to me now, I don't have a data plan. You're driving me crazy. You don't have a data. I don't, because when I'm on my bike or out, I want to be on my bike. I want to be mindful in the moment. I don't want to be pinged by clients waking up in LA.
You made me think of something else too. You said just a moment ago about this highlights another difference between, say, English or Australian mentality versus American, where someone who's English will say, "Hey, I've got 6 months of money. Cool, I can go travel now for 6 months." An American is going to say, "Oh my God, I only have 6 months of money." Is going to be freaking out.
Panic.
And even if you already have savings, and I've met people that are out here and have all this savings already, I'll just speak for myself. I fall in this trap, right? I've got a good situation. I'm very fortunate at the moment. I worked to get it, of course, but also I was fortunate for many things as well that I didn't control, where I was positioned. And so whatever it's worth, some combination of luck and work, I'm in a good situation right now with my money and all these things. Yet I still instead of thinking about, wow, I've got all this runway, a lot of times I get caught thinking, oh my God, I look at how how I'm going through it, like, oh my god, I'm gonna run out. I need to
Sure.
be making more and more and more and more, and you
Well,
get to like chasing the money. You know?
Yeah, the good thing is if you can come out and be objective, you can see the cultural mindset that's been sewed into you from
Yeah, yeah.
childhood. You
It
know?
has, man. It has.
And it takes years to unravel it all. You know?
It takes a lot. For me, it took a trip to the Amazon doing ayahuasca to unravel it.
Things like that.
Yeah,
It doesn't, you know, like trauma. I just had a bike crash a year ago that nearly killed me and things like that. Very interesting but painful times to move forward. You know,
Yeah.
you do ayahuasca or LSD or whatever you do. You
Yeah.
know, things push you in different ways. As I
Yes.
travel outside yourself, the name of the site is about the idea that when
Oh,
you're
this is
so-
your site. Travel outside yourself. I
Yeah.
love the name, by the way.
when you're comfortable within yourself, you can travel and observe it
That's
and be
really,
part
really
of the
true.
environment. You know, I got it from the idea of musicians who can play outside themselves, really. Because if you know how to play guitar or drums or whatever, you're actually listening to everyone else and just doing something.
Yes, yes.
You're doing your own thing.
Yeah, it's this interesting. Again, another thing that seems counterintuitive, but it's like really when you're traveling abroad, you're really journeying inwards in many, many ways. That's
Well,
what.
that's it. You're always at your arrival, and also the journey's inside. Now, there's loads of cliches about it, and blah blah blah. But essentially, the change and the journey.
But they're
is
cliches for a
inside.
reason, because they're true.
Some, yeah, some
not, maybe.
not. But you know, inside it is you change fundamentally,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you can uncouple your old prejudice and beliefs and things like that. I mean, when I was a kid, India was this dirty place where Gandhi threw the Brits out. You know. Then when you go there and you spend a lot of time realizing, geez, this was horrific what they did. You know? And not only there, they did it in Africa, they did it all over the place. And then you can start challenging this nonsense, you know, that you're a divine land and you're amazing people. Everybody is. And the smiles, you know, I mean, you can have a pocket full of money. And my old thing was I used to say, if I don't like someone, I'd love to give them $5 and poke them in the middle of India and say, make your way out with a smile. You know, and that was it. For me, it got me through everything, you know, smiling and being able to be humble.
Yeah, and it's and it's very easy to try to externalize. Like, why am I unhappy? For example, if I'm feeling unhappy, I'll try to say, it's blame somebody. Say this was this person, this thing to me, this thing happened to me. But ultimately, it has nothing at all to do with like what happened externally. That someone did something that it's what was your relationship with that? Like, how did you react to that thing? Like, what did you have some expectation of what was supposed to happen that you didn't meet? And ultimately, that's when you see cultural clashes, for example, or kind of any. It really applies to many things in life where I think about times when I get angry. I'm like, I have to take a step back and say, okay, it's not this other person, it's not this other situation. It's it's me, you know?
You're doing a lot of Buddhism there. It helps
Yeah,
to
this
be in
is
a
kind of
Buddhist country, and I used to teach a lot of basic Buddhism for many years when I lived in the Himalayas. And yeah, it's a different mindset. I mean, for example, when I had my car crash, I told some foreigners, and they were, that's horrific, they're terrible. And there's a 10-minute discussion about, like therapy. The Thais were like, what happened? Oh, I crashed the bike 45 miles an hour. Oh, too bad. Do you want coffee or tea? And you move on. Yeah, and it's sort of, okay, yeah, it's bad, blah, 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 blah. But you know what, the hardships that a lot of people put out here in the West, we just don't have them. We just do not. I mean, poverty, don't get me wrong, I've lived in some of the poorest parts of the United States and some of the wealthiest. There's real relative poverty.
Yeah.
But when you compare it to some of the things you see in India or whatever, it's a total different level of poverty.
And that really goes to a long ways to show what we were talking about this. A lot of it's internal, right? Because you have the Americas, a place without all this problems and poverty other people have. We have great standard of living, yet so many people are depressed.
I know. It's the fastest, I believe, from the World Health Organization. It will overtake heart disease.
It's weird. It's almost like, it's funny because it's like when you don't have things going on, the hardships, the mind has a way of making them. You make the problems, and I'm gonna just say right now, I'm absolutely guilty. I find myself doing this all the time, and I struggle with it because I have so much going for me for all the reasons we talked about already. So much is in my favor, and yet I find myself sometimes creating problems, finding reasons to be upset and sad, and it's like, wait, Mike, sabai, sabai,
Exactly.
as they say here.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, a lot of guys and girls come out here to do the Vipassana meditation.
Yeah, I did in India actually. That's where part of this is coming from. Actually.
Exactly. Yeah. I would.
So you were right that I had some.
No, it's great. I think it's wonderful. I think that it's difficult for the West because the monkey mind flits, and I've done countless monastery retreats and things, and it's not easy. And I wouldn't recommend it.
And I certainly had my issues with it actually, which I've talked about before.
Yeah,
but it's like that was an issue too. Like the fact that I focused a lot on the issues versus like the good things, and now I'm starting to maybe like take the good things.
Well, a lot of the things that good things happen subliminal, subconsciously, without you knowing about them.
Yeah, the shifts that happen.
Yeah, you're already talking in mindfulness ways about your mind and the
learning slowly.
The ghost in the machine and all that. How we're stuck in there and there's a primate and you've got to overcome it all. But yeah, Vipassana, I wouldn't recommend anyone just flip out here and do 3 weeks. I don't think it's healthy, but at the same time.
And for folks who haven't heard the other episodes we talked about it, it's this 10-day meditation course where you are silent.
Yeah.
You've done yourself some
Vipassana. Yeah. It's interesting. I never, but to come from a Western mentality
Hardcore,
and speed, like Manhattan, all of them, and then you're sat in an ashram in India or whatever, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
But
it's hard.
It is.
I struggled a lot.
Yeah.
I think it helped me though. I can say for me it was helpful.
Right. It's horses for courses, or in England we say swings and roundabouts. You get one thing off one and you lose on another. And for some people, like I personally used to teach a basic martial art, and people needed a movement form to meditate. And there's all these things, walking.
Which martial art were you teaching?
Wing Chun.
Okay.
But basic Wing Chun, not the advanced stuff. And also yoga and Tai Chi and things like that. I do it every day. I do all things that I can, but having a moving meditation, it's finding a lock and a key. So you hear about these things. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Or you read a book. I don't know, whatever it is on meditation or something, and then you want to fly away and do it. Well, think about it. Come out here and may have a day in the monastery or something, or
dip your feet in first.
Yeah, just dip in. I'll go to a local. The great thing about Buddhism is it's worldwide now. In California, I know, has some amazing places, and there's big connections with the Tibetans, and you can go and do it there and learn about it. It's like when I first started traveling, I hitchhiked around the UK. I didn't get on a jet and fly out to India, and I learned about human nature and things. Remember I was hitchhiking through New Zealand, and this guy says to me, "Aren't you worried that you're going to meet a crazy?" I said, "No." And he just, "Why?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, not the crazy guy on the right." I said, "Not really. If it happens, it happens. But I go with it, and it might happen."
You can meet a crazy in any situation in life.
Well,
you do actually. Even at the office, there's a crazy person 2 cubicles down from you or something.
I was living in Ohio in the snow belt, and one guy says to me, "You've travelled a bit. Where's the weirdest place you've ever been?" I said, "Right here, mate, in Ohio." I said, I've seen stuff here that it's trippy.
Right.
The United States is an anomaly in many, many ways. The gun crime and the violence and all that stuff. And it is a very strange anomaly. But if you're brought up in it, a fish doesn't know it's in water.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You need to come out and see the other end of it.
It's there's a lot. It's hard when you're kind of. I actually think about the Matrix a lot. I felt like I didn't know what the Matrix was till I was outside of the Matrix, and I was like, there was a lot of things that I was inside of this system and I didn't come to understand until I really had to force by traveling. And the example I gave before with ayahuasca was it really opened my eyes to the fact that the tail was wagging the dog. Where I was saying how the difference in American mentality is that worrying about having the money and always chasing more and more. I was like, wait a minute. So I'm trying to be happy. So I'm trying to be happy. The conventional wisdom as an American was, well, you get a good career, you work your way up, you may get more money, you'll have more freedom to do things. And then you let that kind of happiness trickle down from that. Whereas I was like, whoa, that's completely backwards. And this was the epiphany I had in the middle of a ceremony with this shaman. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. Actually, I should ask myself the other way around. What do I want to do to be happy? And how much money do I need to get it? Oh, wait, I already have it. Okay, let's do that thing then. And that was like a huge, it seems like obvious in hindsight, like, duh, if I already have enough money to do the things I want, what am I doing chasing more money? But like at the time, being in that, since I was a young child, being with this mentality of, there's never enough security, never enough safety.
I mean, there are cultural myths that every nation, forwards. One of them is, the American dream and this idea of bettering yourself and all the rest of it. But the reality is, if you look at the world figures for social mobility, America and the United Kingdom are right at the bottom. You've got more chance of being socially mobile in Scandinavian countries than you have, and they're supposed to be socialists. So,
well, we get kind of trapped, right? Because it's sort of like you go to a university and you get a student loan so you can get a degree, so you can get a high-paying job so you can pay back the student loan. I know of many friends that are stuck in this exact situation right now. My co-host, for example, who's still not calling in this episode, but he calls via Skype in many of these episodes. Justin's trapped there in many ways.
Debt slavery.
Yeah.
It's you don't need to think of guys in dark suits with cigars planning it all. It's there by design. If you're living in a consumer-led society like the United States, it's very difficult to get off, but you have to do it. You have to have a go, and even if you don't like it, you've learned something.
You're right.
And there's no culture's all good or all bad.
Yes, that's true.
All of them are a very mixed bag, and
they all have to be, right? And as much as we can sit here and say that America, I mean, I like you said, leaving, it's easy to shit on your own country, and I can talk a lot about things I don't like, but at the same time, I think about, the U.S. has immense freedom of speech that is not really necessarily, like where we are here in Thailand, for example, not really a thing that people are afforded. So it's there are things. I can also come back and appreciate those things as well. Like America does have a lot of amazing, tremendous freedoms that, the fact that I can be on this podcast right now and I can just shit on the U.S. That's beautiful. That I can talk about the U.S. and and be okay to do that. Like that's beautiful.
In terms of transparency, few can equate to the United States. The problem is that the public have been so overwhelmingly fed mainstream media bullshit propaganda about anything and everything. It's phenomenal. I mean, like this thing in Syria. Obama came out and in 3 days had invented a new enemy that no one had ever heard of.
We created that enemy, right? There were no terror. We literally created the bombs or the seeds.
Yeah, I
didn't
even mean ISIS. There's another one now behind that they invented because it was actually fundamentally illegally what they were doing, and then they thought, well, we need to justify it, and if America.
Well, it's like we went and disrupted a whole country, and then we created the grounds for someone to come and. For these people to come, it's just very.
If you go to the other side, and I've spent a lot of time in Arabia, and the people are beautiful, and they're very friendly and warm. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. It's their code. They're very friendly, and it's just so grim what's happened, and the British are just as culpable as the United States, but. If you get out there and see it for what it is, you can go back and inform people, and the prejudices and the bigotry can be overcome by knowledge and education. And that's the thing. You need to educate people.
Yeah.
You can't convert people, but you can. Right. When I go into a discussion, I used to give talks on propaganda in Washington and Downing Street, the bullshit that comes out. It wasn't to make people say, yeah, I was wrong about it. It was to make them go and study the facts. They shouldn't believe anything I say. They should go away and check it.
Yes.
And
the truth rises to the surface ultimately.
Yeah, I mean you can't. All right, you can't expect people who've done what I've done, 31 years of flying through countries and blah 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 blah. But the internet and other things now make it much more accessible in terms of that. But you should never rely on second-hand digital experiences. You'll never replace, going to a full moon party in Koh Tao, or diving off the Great Barrier Reef, or parascending around the Himalayas. All those things are real, and you'll never replace them with digital experience.
Right. Oh, yeah. You can't just look at a picture of the full moon party and say, oh, yeah, I know what it's like. Or even hear a story of someone listening to a podcast about it. You're not going to, get it.
Maybe this will entice people.
Well, I think that's a lot of ways what I'm trying to do with this show is kind of encourage people like, hey, go and see don't take my word for anything. Go and see for yourself,
You question anything and everything, and especially in the United States where you're able so easily to gain access to information, and if you know your rights and things like that. Whereas For example, Britain compared to the United States, if you know your rights in America, you have much more chance of walking away. Whereas in England, very few people know their rights. We don't have a constitution. You don't necessarily need one. But in England, nobody knows their rights. And there's some good things in that, because the zero-tolerance policy in the United States is not practiced in England. You know, I mean, the cops don't give a shit unless you've got, a safe under your arm or something. Whereas in America, it's become a militant state in many parts. I don't just mean Ferguson, I mean generally. You know.
It is, well, the imprisonment rates and all these things, it is frightening.
It's scary, and there's money, there's a dollar.
Well, there's private people making profit from having people in prison.
Which
so
we find morally.
It is immoral that someone has an incentive to put more people in cages.
It's on the stock exchange.
It's very, very fucked.
It's absolutely. There's some things about America that absolutely, we're on the outside and we just can't get it. Direct marketing of pharmaceuticals to patients. In America, as far as I'm aware, is the only country in the world where you get direct marketing on the TV.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. So you mentioned it.
Well, go
how
and
weird
look.
that
anyway,
is.
you won't see it because it's totally unethical.
Right? Why should someone be a commercial convince you to take a drug? Like you have a doctor that tells you, hey, this is something that medically is a good thing.
And then at the end, you get that flash sign that says, your toes will turn purple, your penis will shrink, your eyes will drop out, and it flashes up for half a second. It's wrong, it's bonkers. But you don't know that until you come out.
Yeah.
And you need to come out.
Well, I'm gonna
wrap up.
I'll ask you one more question though, my man. What is something you personally would like to do in your life that you haven't already done?
Well, it lacks concision. I can't give you a one-off thing. I think teaching more, bringing more people out and educating. There's a ton of countries, and my little scratch on the earth will always be a little scratch. But there's so much more to do, more books to write, more places to visit, more people to teach, more projects online. I want to go off grid soon, solar and things like that, and get out. But it's
self-sustaining.
I think people always say, "Oh, it's so gloomy." This is what you can do a lot by acting locally, community. The word communize is a dirty word in the United States, but it's a wonderful thing if you feel support from people around you. You can't pay for that.
Yeah.
So I would want to create something, not necessarily a hippie commune or whatever, but to create it where like-minded people who have gifts to share, not
kind of like Burning Man. It sounds like
not dissimilar. That's a bit corporate for me, but something similar.
Fair point.
You know what I mean?
But the spirit of it, where it's maybe tell me if I'm interpreting this right, but I have a similar idea as well, where it's like you have some kind of community of people that we're all helping each other because we want to. Everyone's contributing, and everyone's helping everyone. We have it kind of self-sustaining little community kind of thing.
Well, there's nothing new about it. We've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years.
That's how humans lived.
That we've lost it. We've become atomized. We're all on our smartphones.
Oh, we worry about GDP.
There you go.
We look at what's the measure of success is money and not happiness. Yeah. So we measure like countries against each other on these. And there's one country, was it Bhutan or something, that has gross national happiness
index.
I love that. Instead of like gross domestic product, why not gross national happiness? What are we trying to get here? It's. Yeah. You're right, man.
I think it's Costa Rica that have given up the army and the navy and put all the funding into other social projects. Now I always say to Americans, if you put the money you were putting in the military, you would live like the Swiss. It would be like Switzerland, because we spend more on military than the whole world combined almost. And it should be the golden land. Yeah. Because there's the innovation there and there's the wealth, but it's all being funneled in the wrong place.
I think it's a pendulum though, right? Like we're swinging too far that way. Maybe we're gonna there's gonna be inevitably a swing back in the other direction.
Possibly.
I would, in the bigger, I would. This is my optimistic view of things. Hopefully as we swing back the other way each time, the pendulum kind of brings us closer to something that's more to what we'd think of the ideal or whatever. Not that there's ever such a thing.
Possibly. One thing I would say is that social programs and justices are never given from above. They're always taken by popular movements. If you look at the 60s in the United States, many of the social norms, funnily enough, Nixon, who people have a go at, gave a lot of good things to America, the EPA and the Gay Rights Act and things like that. Nixon looks left wing now compared to Reagan and what's been going on in the Bush and that. But those movements were taken by people collectively organizing. Not blogging, and this is great. Podcasts are great and all that, but you need action, direct action. Now, whether that's mass civil disobedience or whatever. But travel is one of those things. You know, when you get out and you see it, so you can go back and say, "Wow, okay, this is great, and we're good at this." But you know what? In Bhutan they do this, or in Delhi they do this, or
there's other ways of looking at it than the way we've decided is the system. And absolutely, man. I just had a thought, and it just escaped me just now.
Brain fart.
I had a brain fart. Shit. Okay. Well, maybe it will come back to me. Folks can find you at couple different websites. PeteHillman.com. So they can find you, like your web resources, helping people, doing that consulting, helping them build their sites, all these things.
And the other thing is traveloutsideyourself.com. They can get me in so many different ways. If they want to do it and they're scared, then I can show them.
So this is to help people who want to. Someone who, for example, if you're sitting there in your cubicle and you want to go on a backpacking trip, but you don't, you're scared. Hey, this is a great resource. You take them around and off the beaten path, sort of. Though.
That's it. It's to get out there and go. And it doesn't cost a lot of money, and you don't have to be special, and you can be male or female. A lot of the people who are taking are women who want an invisible guide, which offers a sort of sense of security, but not being present all the time. You look around the pyramids, or you want to, look at Everest or whatever. You don't want some annoying guy telling you the history of it all. Just a little bit of security to travel. It's a great thing, and it's all out there. But you've got to go. I'm not trying to sell it, but you've got to go quick because of the speed of the cultural erosion. It's massive, and it's quick, and it's pervasive, and it's ubiquitous. Things that we took for granted in India 30 years ago have gone. And bear in mind, India's put over 350 million people on its books since I first went.
Yeah.
So everything's changed in terms of resource management of the cities. They're huge now, and go now and do it.
That's
it's all out there.
I think that's a great. Your site would be a great resource for people who want to, take that first step, dip their feet. Please do check it out if you are interested. If you are someone sitting there, in your cube or desk, and you think you have dreams of travel, but you're worried of all these various reasons, whether or not you believe it's because of programming or because of some other thing. Like, if you're interested, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are, and you haven't gone and taken Leap yet, hey, this is one awesome resource, I would say.
Well, thanks a lot. And the other thing is go to Lonely Planet, go to the thorn tree there, and look up, and find things, and don't believe the mainstream. Always dig underneath.
And I remember now the thought I had. It's that revolution you're talking about that's happening. I think it's going to be a different kind. It'll be like a revolution of like not a non-violent, like of the mind of people. Maybe the internet's part of it. It's people, in the sense of Gandhi said, it's people kind of thinking differently. And
it's a
it's a consciousness shift. And I think that is, really what the travel kind of is a big part of too. The travel and the internet, all these things together. It's, hey, let's change our paradigms. We have access now to see different points of view, to communicate those back and forth. Like, I think something big is happening with everything that's going on with the world, the way the world's open now in the way it never has before.
Well, in many ways it is, and I think that people in the United States, particularly of wealth, who can travel, because very few people actually travel extensively. And many Americans I know don't have passports, but many can't get passports in other countries. So it's a choice in the United States, whereas in other countries it's not a choice. It's not open.
As much, and again, we're not here to convert anybody, but if you're there sitting and you're thinking about it, do it.
Just go.
Just do it. And you won't regret the decision. I can promise you that much. Sure. Awesome. Do you have like a Twitter or anything else, Facebook page?
No. I just those resources. You can Google Pete Hillman, or my Buddhist name is Bo Makalu, and you'll find me on that.
Okay, sweet. And I, as always, I will post links to the ways to find you, as well as other content, to things we mentioned on this episode, when I post the blog post for this episode, which you can find at WTEpodcast.com. So thank you, everybody, for listening. please do go ahead if you have a chance. If you like the show, give us a rating on iTunes. We love hearing from you. It helps us out. Also, if you want to get yourself a free audiobook and also help support the show at the same time, you can do that at audibletrial.com/WTE podcast. Pete, thanks again, man, for coming on. This was an awesome time, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we will catch you next time. Cheers.
That was part 2 of Mike's conversation with digital nomad and traveler Pete Hillman. Next time on Walking the Earth podcast, Mike sits down with Zachary, a Canadian traveler and author who's been on the road for several years, and they talk about India. In the meantime, this is Justin Castle signing out from New York City. Catch you next time. Take care.